Welcome everyone to this lecture on setting up Spacy. Before we set up Spacy and download the language library, let's quickly discuss what Spacy actually is. Spacy is an open source natural language processing library for Python. It's designed to effectively handle NLP tasks with the most efficient implementation of common tasks and algorithms. That means for many natural language processing tasks, Spacy only has one implemented method, choosing the most efficient algorithm currently available. Usually that means state-of-the-art. This means you often don't actually have the option to choose between algorithms for a particular task. Spacy only has one option, which is the most efficient currently available. Now, NLTK is another library we're going to be using throughout this course, and this one's more common, so you may have already heard of it. NLTK stands for the Natural Language Toolkit, and it's a very popular open source library. It was initially released in 2001, so that means it's much older than Spacy, which was released in 2015. It also provides many functionalities, but includes less efficient implementations. And that's probably one of the main differences between Spacy and NLTK. So let's quickly compare the two. For many common NLP tasks, Spacy is much faster and more efficient, at the cost of the user not being able to choose a specific algorithmic implementation. For most use cases, that really doesn't matter because you care about the end result, not using a particular form of the algorithm. So for that reason, Spacy is much faster than NLTK because NLTK has a variety of implementations for a lot of common tasks, when Spacy just defaults to the most efficient currently available. And it's also much newer. Keep in mind, Spacy doesn't include some pre-created models for some applications that NLTK does, such as sentiment analysis, which is typically easier to perform with NLTK. That means in this course, due to Spacy's state-of-the-art approach and efficiency, we're going to focus on using Spacy where it really matters, but we'll also introduce and use NLTK when it's easier to use for certain tasks. By the end of the course, you should feel comfortable utilizing both libraries when they are best suited for a particular task. Now there is some processing data as far as efficiency of NLTK versus Spacy, and here we can see a table comparing Spacy to a bunch of other libraries, including NLTK there at the bottom, and we have the absolute millisecond per document on the same hardware being run, and we also have relative to Spacy, which is probably the more important part. So notice here that Spacy can tokenize, tag, and parse documents, and if you compare its speed to NLTK, NLTK takes 20 times longer to actually tokenize in a document reading, and it takes 443 times longer to tag, and it actually doesn't even perform parsing. So you can already tell here that Spacy is much more efficient than NLTK, up to 400 times more efficient or more. So that's really why we're focusing on Spacy throughout this course. If you want to get more facts and figures of performance metrics of Spacy versus other libraries, you can check out this link above, spacy.io/usage/facts-figures, and it'll compare the capabilities of Spacy versus other libraries. Keep in mind, we're focused on Python, so really you should be focused on Spacy versus NLTK. And you can see here, it has a lot more models implemented. Things like neural network models, Spacy's built ready to perform state-of-the-art neural network analysis, and NLTK really isn't suited for that. But there are a few cases where we're going to use NLTK throughout the course. So keep in mind, check out that link if you want Spacy compared to other libraries. For now, let's quickly walk through setting up Spacy and downloading the language library. For this, I'm going to open up my command prompt. So if you're on macOS or Linux, open your terminal. And if you're on Windows, open up your either Anaconda prompt or your command prompt. Let's head over to that now. So depending on how you actually downloaded and installed Python and Anaconda, you should be opening up either the Anaconda prompt or the command prompt. And if you're on a Windows computer, you want to make sure you run this as an administrator. You also want to make sure you don't have a firewall because we're going to be downloading a language library from the internet. So from my command prompt, I'm going to run this as an administrator. And now I have my command prompt. Keep in mind, sometimes when you run this as an administrator, it'll automatically open to System32. You probably just want to be located in your C folder. So the first thing I'm going to type in is if you're located in kind of a strange folder with some permissions issues, type cd space ... and then cd space ... and now we're in the C drive. That should make sure that we don't have any permission issues, as well as the fact that we're running this as an administrator. The first thing you need to do is make sure you've activated our virtual environment that we provide, or if you're not using our virtual environment, make sure you actually have installed Spacy. Now there's several ways to do this. If you're using Anaconda, you can say conda install space -c conda -forge Spacy. And we actually have all of this in the Spacy Basics notebook. You can go ahead and check that out. We have a two-step process written out. And you can hit enter here, and that should install Spacy for you from the Anaconda packaging system. So let's go ahead and fast forward in time until that's done installing. Once that's done installing everything, you should see a bunch of stuff that looks like this. Again, if you're using our environment file, this should have been installed for you already. The next thing, however, you're going to have to do, even if you are using our environment file, and that is, from the command line, we need to download the language library that Spacy needs. And that language library is a big reason about why Spacy can operate so efficiently. So to do this, you're going to need to double check that you have full administrative capabilities to download stuff onto your computer. If you're on a work computer, you may need to ask for those permissions. You may also need to check that, make sure you don't have a firewall blocking your ability to download stuff from the internet. So the next thing from the command line is you're going to type Python space -m space Spacy space download space EN, which stands for English. And you're going to do this once you've installed Spacy. Go ahead and hit enter. And what this is going to do is it's going to automatically download from the command line the English language library. Now you can see here, I've actually already performed this download. If you haven't yet, it may take a while, but on success, you should see something that says something like linking successful. So it says you can now load the model using this command spacy.load en. So that's what we're going to be using in the next lecture to actually load up our English model. And there's various versions of the English model. You can check out the Spacy documentation for more details, and we'll explore it as we go along for the course. But those are essentially the main two steps that we need to do. We need to make sure we had Spacy installed, and also make sure that we set up the Spacy language library. Coming up next, we're going to have a quick discussion on natural language processing basics before we jump into Spacy basics. We'll see you at the next lecture.